Hello, everybody. Welcome back. It is November 17th, 2020. It is Tuesday. And I know I'm very late on this, but Donald Trump has lost the election according to projections from several reputable publishers. I think every reputable publisher at this point has said that he has lost. Obviously, the election took place on November 3rd. We didn't really know the complete results, and it wasn't really officially called. Not well, of course, none of this is official because this is these are the projections of news organizations. But by November, uh, what was it, 6th, I think, which was Friday, mostly everybody had called it and said it's pretty much going to be Joe Biden. Now, like I said, we didn't know until for a few days, and this is just as I predicted on my episode that was on election night. And I know I didn't tweet, or I didn't tweet. I know I didn't stream on Twitch. I know I didn't upload an episode last week. Sorry, it's just school's been so crazy. I think this is literally just going to be the last 2 3 weeks of school, and then after that I'll probably be uploading a lot more. I'll even probably upload throughout the Christmas break or the holiday break. We'll see how that goes, but sorry about that. But we're back on now. It really looked bad for Trump, or it looked bad for Biden at first if you were watching the results coming in early in the night. But as many predicted, and I guess I sort of implicitly knew this, but I didn't really say it, as the mail in votes would start coming in, it would start turning over for Biden. And that is what happened in several states. Michigan flipped overnight. I don't remember exactly what day that happened. Pennsylvania eventually flipped. Georgia eventually flipped. After Wisconsin eventually flipped from Trump to Biden after the mail-in votes had began count. They had began counting mail-in votes that had been received on or after Election Day, or other votes that uh, they may have been delayed in counting, but mostly mail-in votes. Trump immediately came out on. Excuse me. Sorry, Trump did not immediately come out on election night. He came out on November 5th, and he said he won. And I have a recording of that. Let's listen.
Good evening. I'd like to provide the American people with an update on our efforts to protect the integrity of our very important 2020 election. If you count the legal votes, I easily win. If you count the illegal votes, they can try to steal the election from us. If you count the votes that came in late, we're looking at them very strongly, but a lot of votes came in late. I've already decisively won many critical states, including massive victories in Florida, Iowa, Indiana, Ohio, to name just a few.
Now, he did eventually win the states that he talked about winning, but and he said decisively because those were the only ones he could absolutely say for sure. But as I predicted in my episode on election night, and as you know, anybody with a brain really predicted, Trump came out and announced himself the winner, and he said the votes that were not for him were fraudulent votes, or the votes that were. I mean, that's essentially what he's saying. I mean, an honest interpretation is, or just a completely non-biased interpretation of what he's saying, I guess, is mail-in or votes counted after election day are fraudulent. But in reality, what he means, votes not for me are fraudulent, and that's exactly what he's saying. He later came out and I think he said, we should continue voting we should continue counting the votes in Arizona, but stop the count in, certain other states that he was winning. Like I think he tried to stop in Michigan and Pennsylvania. We'll get into that in the next segment, but that essentially happened just as he spoke of suppression, just as we predicted. He spoke of suppression polls and the media having to do with what was going on. I don't know what suppression polls are. I mean, if a poll is wrong, then it's a wrong poll. I don't know if it really uh, persuades anybody to go one way or the other, unless it's that your candidate is winning by such a high margin that you feel that you don't have to vote. But those weren't the polls he was referring to. He was referring to polls that were having him down, which were suppression polls. He specifically called out Quinnipiac in his little tirade that he gave there at the White House, and also Quinnipiac very often gives much higher margins to Democratic candidates. I don't have any data for that, but that's just from what I see, and I think they got a lot of states wrong, and so but. That's what he's talking about. He's not talking about suppression polls that might actually be suppression polls. He's talking about nonsense, as he usually does. Now, he's been going on a tweeting spree for the past few days, and his tweets have been flagged, and we're going to talk about that in today's last segment. And many of his tweets have been flagged, saying this is incomplete or unsubstantiated information uh, from sources. Actually, I had some tweets pulled up. Or, actually, no, I did not. I thought I did. The tags Twitter has been tagging or flagging some of Trump's tweets as saying this claim about election fraud is disputed. That seems to be the most popular one whenever he makes a claim about, the fake news stealing the votes, or the fake news media and the Democrats, radical left Democrats. And also, Trump just straight up tweeted, "I won the election" on November 16th, which was yesterday. And Twitter flagged it as saying multiple sources called this election differently. And so that's been going on, and it's so I think Twitter pulled this out. They would not have pulled this out if Trump had won more decisively, I think, or just won by any measure that a reputable, not decisively, that was an incorrect use of the term, by any measure that a news organization would have said Trump is the president. They wouldn't have gone down as hard on him now as they are with all these flagged. I mean, you just go through his Twitter. All of his tweets, not all, but a large portion of his tweets are flagged. Anything having to do with the election, essentially. Um, More people turned out to vote this election. These are just some important points at the end here. More people turned out to vote in this election than any other election ever. I think uh, our estimated voter turnout somewhere between like 66 and 70%, which is by far the largest in a very, very long time. Um, More people turned out and voted for either candidate. Trump got more votes than any candidate ever, just like Joe Biden got more votes than any candidate ever. Joe Biden did end up winning the popular vote by 5 million, which is, I think, the largest, uh, or, I mean, one of the largest in recent memory. I don't know if it's the largest margin, but he certainly got more votes than any other candidate ever in history. It's just like Trump. Biden still won through the Electoral College, which was 306 to 232, which is the same margin in which Trump beat Hillary. That's the projected margin currently, and I mean that's what it's going to be. Uh, but it was very close in several states. I mean, this could have very easily gone another way. If I mean in Pennsylvania, I think on election night, Trump was up at like 16 points at one point, and then Biden turned it around with the mail-in votes. Um, Up, and then he got up to, I think, maybe plus 10 or something, or not, maybe not plus 10, but he got up to a large lead, a large margin. And then now I believe Pennsylvania is sitting at around 1%. So and Pennsylvania was one of these key states where he needed to win, some combination of Georgia, North Carolina, Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and those were all important. And he did win all of those. Him being Joe Biden, except for North Carolina, where he's projected to win all of those. Georgia is within zero point 0.5 points uh, margin, so they can request, or so the either party can request a recount, and Donald Trump has done that. And it was a lot. It was really close in a lot of these places. Georgia was in within zero point 0.5 points. Arizona was very close. Nevada is very close. Michigan was very close. Pennsylvania was very close. So this wasn't the landslide we needed to have gotten Donald Trump out, but or not to have gotten Donald Trump out, but to have shown with enough vigor, I guess, that the United States has rejected Donald Trump. It's incredible that he got this many votes, and something like 60. Oh man, I forgot the exact number, but somewhere in the 60 something percent of Trump voters believe there was some sort of election fraud. Like, these are people we still have to live with in our country even after Trump is gone, and that's going to be, we're certainly going to be talking about that for years to come. Okay, so just to give a this, I'm not too much of a legal scholar or somebody who knows how litigation works exactly, but Trump has several legal challenges that I want to talk about in several states that were contested. Every single state that I named, I think, a few seconds ago in the last segment about states that either candidate needed to win some combination of those states. Um, so he has several different lawsuits. I think in the dozens of lawsuits in states like Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, Nevada, and Georgia. I predicted this as well, but it's not really relevant because he's saying mail-in votes. he's been saying for a long time that mail-in votes were going to be fraudulent anyway. So, he himself said gave the idea that there was going to be some sort of litigation. So, me calling this and other people calling this is not some sort of big accomplishment when he was saying this for a long time. And so we should have expected this, and I mean, we do expect this. Most of these cases have absolutely no legs to stand on at all. A lot of them are being thrown out, even by conservative judges. And in a lot of cases, and I think the majority of cases, it's only over a few dozen votes. Like maybe at max, like a couple hundred votes in like one county, and it's like the whole state like went completely in one way, or not one way, but one way enough that these votes won't matter. Even if you get like, I didn't do the math through all of them because there were just so many cases that Trump and others have made against states alleging voter fraud, that I don't, but I don't know that they all add up to even be able to do anything. I mean, but this is what is happening, and he has open cases in all those states that I named, and varying things about, in Arizona there was a case that they used Sharpies on ballots in one county, and some of the votes bled through to the back, and you voted for other people because the machine scanned it by accident. And it's like, how many votes does that even affect? And in Pennsylvania, and or not Pennsylvania, but I believe Wisconsin, they wanted to get them to stop counting absentee ballots after election day completely. Like, it was just so ridiculous. I don't even remember, but none of these cases are going to do anything at all. Like, even if they succeed in overturning what they want to overturn, which most of them are not, this isn't going to affect the outcome of the election at all. It's a really sad attempt by a desperate person. But I think this goes into a lot about the transactional nature of the Republican Party. Trump essentially bought the Republican Party, right? When he won before he won the nomination, prominent Republicans and conservatives alike were saying that he was bad for the country, he was divisive, he was a con man, he's a cheat, he's a known liar, all these things. Lindsey Graham, Mitch McConnell, Ted Cruz. We all remember before 2016 the things that they were saying about Donald Trump. But as soon as Donald Trump won the nomination, and well, I guess it was just as soon as he won the nomination, every single, well, maybe not Ted Cruz, because then he went to the RNC and gave that speech. Once he was the president, for sure, the entire Republican apparatus bent the knee to everything Trump wanted and was there to carry water for his fascistic talking points and rhetoric, and spread his conspiracy theories for him and spread his lies for him. We see that in Dan Crenshaw. We see that in Mitch McConnell. All Texas politicians, essentially. John Cornyn, Ted Cruz. We also see Rick DeSantis, who's the Florida governor, and just disgusting people who have immediately bent the knee, and they have been bought by Donald Trump. That none of them are principled enough or have the morals to stand up to him or disagree with him or vote the other way or say that this is wrong. I mean, John McCain in his last days did so. Mitt Romney in some instances kind of shows that, hey, I don't like this guy, but most of the time he votes with him anyway, and he's part of the Republican machine. So that's largely for show. Um, so this is simply transactional. So what I'm saying is, and so what the way I bring this into the legal challenges from Trump is, when they lose an election, first of all, they're already compromised by Trump, so they'll just do whatever he wants. And Trump is a completely transactional person, so he fits in perfectly. He says, well, I've lost the election. So the logical thing to do, if I'm just somebody with a lot of money, a lot of resources on my side, is I can just sue, right? I can just sue and have this, even if I don't turn it the other way, I can extend this process for as long as I want, just because I don't see this as being the will of the people, the will of our democracy. This isn't just a function of how our politics and government functions. I simply, if I have the resources, and if I have enough resources to do something and shape the outcomes of anything to my will, then I will do everything in my power to do it, regardless of anything else, because he's purely a transactional person. So, like, these whole legal challenges are just, it's so emblematic of the Republican Party and of Trumpism, and they have been completely bought by him, bought by Donald Trump and by Trumpism. And I fear many of them are not just doing this for the sake of party loyalty, but because they're actually one of these sycophantic Trump QAnon people. We're seeing that more and more in Congress with congressional candidates and people who have actually been elected into office. I forgot the woman's name, who is actually a QAnon believer. You know, one of these anti-maskers. It's like, what do you do in those instances when these people are actually crazy and they're not just saying this for the sake of party loyalty, and they actually believe these things? How do you function like that in government? I said, like I said in my last segment, it's going to be something we're going to have to be dealing with for a long time. But these legal challenges are at the core of the transactional nature of Trumpism and the Republican Party. Okay, so this last segment, Ted Cruz is really stupid. I was thinking of a thing to do for today's show, and I was kind of looking through the news. I had these first two segments prepared, and then I was looking through, and then right around this time, that I'm recording, which is 4 or 5 o'clock uh, on the 17th, I'm scrolling through my different news outlets, seeing what's going on, and I see that Ted Cruz is trending, and in conservative media all over the place, Ted Cruz is going off. So I'm like, oh my God, what's going on with Ted Cruz? I watched this video of Ted Cruz, and it is like the dumbest thing I've ever seen, and it is also just. I mean, we're gonna dissect this. We're gonna dissect this. It's gonna be good. So this is Ted Cruz. I guess he's on the Senate Intelligence Committee. I'm not exact. Oh, okay. Wow. This is shows how my lack of research here. But Ted Cruz is in some sort of committee. I'm sorry for not knowing that. He's in some sort of committee right now, and he is he is questioning Jack Dorsey, who is the CEO of Twitter, on a few policies and some happenings from his website, and why certain tweets are being flagged. And let's just see. So we're gonna this. It's like a 2 minute and 30 second clip that's going viral right now, and we're gonna watch the first minute, because I mean that's a whole thing on its own, and then we're gonna watch the other minute and a half, because that's an entire other that's an entire other how does the phrase go, can of worms. This is crazy, and this deserves so much scrutiny. We're gonna get right into it. So this is the first minute of the viral clip going around of Senator Ted Cruz questioning CEO of Twitter, Jack Dorsey.
Does voter fraud exist?
I don't know for certain.
Are you an expert in voter fraud?
No, I'm not.
Well, why then is Twitter right now putting purported warnings on virtually any statement about voter fraud?
We're simply linking to a broader conversation so that people have more information.
No, you're not. You put up a page that says, quote, voter fraud of any kind is exceedingly rare in the United States. That's not linking to a broader conversation. That's taking a disputed policy position. And you're a publisher when you're doing that. You're entitled to take a policy position, but you don't get to pretend you're not a publisher and get a special benefit under Section 230 as a result.
That link is pointing to a broader conversation with tweets from publishers and people all around the country.
So I hope this isn't boring for you, but we need to break down exactly how stupid and absurd this is, and this just goes to show exactly what I said about Ted Cruz and others, that they bend the knee to Donald Trump and repeat his talking points, conspiracy theories, and all of that just for party loyalty and because they have no morals or principles and they are bad people. So what? Ted Cruz starts off by asking Jack Dorsey, "Does voter fraud exist?" Jack Dorsey says, "I'm not sure." Stupid answer, honestly, because it obviously exists. "Are you an expert in voter fraud?" "No." "Why is Twitter putting warnings on tweets, virtually every tweet about voting fraud?" Ted Cruz said, "That is not true." Okay, most tweets, I would venture to say, with that mention voter fraud, don't have any tax on them. It's only tweets by the president and Republicans that are flagged because they are incorrect. Largely, when they are incorrect or when they are misleading, they are appropriately marked. But Ted Cruz asks, why is Twitter putting warnings on virtually every tweet about voter fraud? He says, "We don't put a warning. We put a link on the tweet to a broader conversation," which is true. I will put up the page now of the exact page that Ted Cruz was referring to, because he says, no, you don't link it to a broader conversation. You have a page that says voter fraud is exceedingly rare, which is up on screen right now. And he says his argument here is that essentially when Twitter is doing this, when Twitter is linking to a page that says, that was written by them, that says voter fraud is exceedingly rare, they are effectively a publisher. And then Twitter said, or Jack Dorsey said, no, it's a link to a broader conversation. So I hope, again, this is gonna get kind of legalistic. I'm not, and this is like super amateur. I'm not a lawyer. This is not law advice. Maybe I'm completely wrong on this, but it seems to me that Ted Cruz's argument is, since Twitter has this page that says voter fraud is exceedingly rare, which is still up, then that then violates their protection as a, and now I'm going to put this up on the screen, which is Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, which Ted Cruz was referring to. He was saying you don't get to have the same protections under CDA 230 because you are effectively acting as a publisher when you are saying things like voter fraud is exceedingly rare. And so Section 230 says no provider or user of an interactive computer system. And this is the clause that they're referring to. I don't know if clause is the right word to use, but this is the civil liability part that Ted Cruz is referring to. No provider or user of an interactive computer service like Twitter shall be treated as the publisher or speaker of any information provided by another information content provider. So what that means is Twitter cannot be held, civilly liable for anything that a user decides to tweet on their platform. Makes sense. And the reason that is because of this next part. So civil liability. No provider or user of an interactive computer, or excuse me. Yes. No provider or user of an interactive computer service shall be held liable on account of any action voluntarily taken in good faith to restrict access to or availability of that material that the provider or user considers to be obscene, lewd, lascivious, filthy, excessively violent, harassing, or otherwise objectionable, whether or not such material is constitutionally protected, or any action taken to enable or make available to information content providers or others the technical means to restrict access to material described in paragraph. Okay, just forget what I completely said. I mean, if you are somebody who's familiar with like terms like this and with speaking in this sort of way, then okay, you know what I'm talking about. But just forget everything I said. Don't rewind or try to make sense of it. It's up on the screen if you want to read it yourself. But essentially what this means is Twitter cannot be held accountable for restricting content. Also, if it's in good faith, like they said, if there's anything objectionable on the site, Twitter can flag it or completely take it down or take down someone's account, and they can't be held civilly liable because they, in good faith, are determining that this is objectionable. And they are also not a publisher of information for themselves. All they do is provide people with information, and then they mediate what that information is. And it says, and in the first part that you see right there at the top, C1, I don't know exactly what that's called. It says no provider or user of an interactive computer service shall be treated as the publisher or speaker. So Ted Cruz's argument is saying by having that page up that says voter, what was it? What did it say exactly? I'm sorry about this. Let me see. Voter fraud is exceedingly rare. He's saying they are effectively being a publisher by doing that, and so they don't receive the same civil protections that I just laid out for you. They can be sued now if they decide to flag tweets or if they decide to take down tweets because they are now publishing information of their own. That is Ted Cruz's argument. Now, that is completely absurd, obviously, because Jack Dorsey was correct. His page, Twitter did write that page that says voter fraud is exceedingly rare, but they linked the rest of the page. If you scroll down all throughout, it's independent journalists, it's mainstream media sources, all saying that this stuff is very, very rare. All this stuff is very rare. Twitter is just reporting to you what the facts are. And Ted Cruz also described it as taking a policy position that is disputed. Okay, listen, a position can, or not, I don't know if he said policy position, but he's taking a disputed position, a position on a disputed matter. A matter can be disputed and one side is clearly correct. Just because we have two people, or not two people, but just because we have two sides of the climate debate in the United States does not mean that we should weigh each one as being equally potentially valid. No, one is denying the facts and making up their own facts and living in a fantasy world, and the other one is looking at the facts and telling you what the facts are. It doesn't, okay, it can still be it can still be a disputed matter like voter fraud, but one side clearly has the facts on their side, and the other side is clearly just trying to scare people or to spread different disinformation. So they're not taking, just because Ted Cruz says it and he sounds really good while saying it. I don't know why this is making the rounds on conservative media. Ted Cruz is really making himself look like an absolute fool here. Doesn't mean that it's true. It doesn't mean that it's true. They're not publishing any information. All they're saying is every source that's credible in the world is saying that this problem is very, very rare, and it was not a problem that greatly influenced, to any real degree, the recent election that happened. That's all they're saying. They are not publishing their own information. They're not publishing their own findings. They are linking to a greater conversation with many other articles, many other independent journalists. They are not publishing any information of their own. So Ted Cruz's own argument is stupid here. Okay, so the second part of this is okay, let's watch it.
Mr. Dorsey, would the following statement violate Twitter's policies? Quote, absentee ballots remain the largest source of potential voter fraud.
I imagine that we would label it so that people can have more context and read through.
How about this quote? Quote, third-party organizations, candidates, and political activists, voter fraud is particularly possible where, quote, third-party organizations, candidates, and political party activists are involved in, quote, handling absentee ballots. Would you flag that as potentially misleading?
I don't know the specifics of how we might enforce that, but I imagine a lot of these would have a label pointing people to a bigger conversation.
Well, you're right. You would label them because you've taken the political position right now that voter fraud doesn't exist. I would note both of those quotes come from the Carter-Baker Commission on Federal Election Reform. That is Democratic President Jimmy Carter and former Secretary of State James Baker. And Twitter's position is essentially voter fraud does not exist. Are you aware that just 2 weeks ago in the state of Texas, a woman was charged with 134 counts of election fraud? Are you aware of that?
I'm not aware of that.
If I tweeted that statement with a link to the indictment, would you put a warning on it that says, well, the Democratic Party position right now is voter fraud doesn't exist?
I don't think it's useful to get into hypotheticals, but I don't believe so.
You don't believe so? Well, we're going to test that because I'm going to tweet that and we'll see what you put on it.
You know what? Ted Cruz is not stupid, okay? He is just he's dangerously smart and dangerously good at making really, really, really stupid arguments look like they make sense. Ted Cruz is actually a really smart guy, okay? He's not stupid. I don't want to say he's stupid. He's a really smart person, but he's super dishonest, and he is just a liar and a bad person. I'll say he's a bad person. That I'll say 100%. Anyway, he went on, so that whole series of tweets thing that he went on, he said, well, if I were to tweet this, would this get flagged? What was the first one he said? He said, if I were to tweet a tweet saying that voter fraud or absentee ballots remain the largest source of voter fraud, would that get flagged? Jack Dorsey said, potentially, I don't know. If I had a tweet that said something to the effect of, I forgot what the exact wording was. Actually, no, I'll put them up on screen for you right now. I forgot. I have the tweets. They are right here. I will put them up on screen for you. Let me see. Let me pull them up for myself. So the first tweet from Ted Cruz is, Twitter test number 1. Absentee ballots remain the largest source of potential voter fraud. And then he links to a research paper or a report that I will talk about. And that was not flagged by Twitter because it was a quote from a report. Also, maybe because he told them ahead of time and they just made sure not to do it just to be assholes about it, but whatever. So, Twitter test number 2, and I've just put this up on screen. Voter fraud is particularly possible where third-party organizations, candidates, and political party activists are involved in handling absentee ballots. And he links to that same report. And it was the same paragraph in the same report. But again, I'll talk more about that. And that did not get flagged by Twitter yet, right? This is the idea. Okay, and his third and final tweet that he mentioned, voter fraud does exist. This is just one example. Limestone County individual charged with 134 counts of voter fraud. And this tweet also is not flagged. Voter fraud does exist. It's not a controversial statement. Everybody believes voter fraud exists. It's to the degree which it has an actual effect on our elections. So, this is so stupid in so many ways because this does not prove the point that Ted Cruz thinks it's proving. So, even if they were to have marked his tweets by saying this, well, they wouldn't have marked it. They wouldn't have marked this tweet. What am I talking about? They wouldn't have marked because the tweets they've been flagging have said this is incorrect information about this is straight up a lie, or they say this is or they'll link to something that says voter fraud is exceedingly rare. Um, if somebody is saying that it happened to the point where it made a difference in the election, Ted Cruz is not. Ted Cruz is being so careful in the things he says. He's quoting a report and then he's saying voter fraud does exist, none of which are controversial on their own. It would then be controversial to say, and then therefore this had an influence on the outcome of the 2020 election. That would then be flagged because that is misleading. Quoting reports and saying voter fraud does exist, here's one example, are very purposely meant to seem like they are controversial. And I don't know. So here's the thing. I don't know if Ted Cruz and conservatives are genuinely stupid enough to believe that Twitter would flag something like this because they just hate conservatives or something, or if they know, or if they purposely carefully worded this in a totally what's the word, uh harmless, I don't remember the exact word I'm trying, that he totally worded this in a harmless manner to purposely not set off the alarms in Twitter. Like, I don't know which is which, if he's really that calculated, which it may be, because then it'll show that, oh well, Twitter won't flag it if I tell them ahead of time. Like, it's a win-win for them. Like, because they'll be able to come out and say, well, if I tell them ahead of time, they won't do it because they're just trying to prove something. But they would have otherwise done it if I wouldn't. But these Twitter tests failed. Okay, so this literally just these three tweets alone prove Ted Cruz's points wrong. Unless you want to then turn around and say, well, the media is fake, and by that I mean by turning around and saying, well, I told them ahead of time, so they already knew. And like, these are trump cards that people use, saying, oh well, the media doesn't say the thing I'm saying, which is obviously a lie. Well, that's because the media is fake. Oh well, the thing that I said would happen didn't happen. Oh well, that's because they knew ahead of time and they changed what they were gonna do because they just want to be dickheads about it. I don't know. Okay, his other two tweets. Okay, well, first of all, let me get into this Limestone County tweet about this woman in Limestone County. So 134 votes. The Limestone County had 8,000 votes, and 75% of them went to Trump. 134 votes is nothing, and in a state that went to Trump by more than 5 points, you know what? You know what I would call that, people? I would call that exceedingly rare, and that would be appropriately called exceedingly rare. Okay, sorry. Okay, so that's that. So, in his other report that he linked to, which was from the Commission of Federal Elections, he did correctly quote it both times, in that they said that absentee ballots remain the primary source of election fraud, and when third parties handle the distribution or attainment or whatever of absentee ballots, that also makes it susceptible to fraud. These are quotes straight from the report, from a 2005 report, who that later went on in the same section to talk about, well, every time we have caught absentee voter fraud, it's been a few dozen people. Literally, max, it's like a few hundred people in one county, and it's like a big county, and they find it because it's easy to find this stuff when you're looking for it, and we have agencies that do that. And so, you know what? If I have a few dozen votes in statewide elections, or a few hundred votes, uh, in a few counties, and they get found, you know what I would call that? I would call that exceedingly rare. So his own report that he linked to doesn't prove his point. He's a very stupid guy, and this is what I don't know if he's stupid. He's making very stupid arguments, and this is part of the false dichotomy thing, which I mentioned a little bit earlier. It's like, oh well, we have two people on the side of the is climate change real debate, so therefore, who really knows? It's a toss up. Let's listen to all sides and evaluate everybody as if they have equal merits to what they're saying. No, same thing with election fraud. Not just because there are two people or there are two groups on opposing sides of was there voter fraud to the point that it affected the outcome doesn't mean that each one is equally valid. They are not. This is stupid. This is a false dichotomy. And because a non-publisher, a internet whatever provider that was outlined, an interactive computer service like Twitter, just states facts and states what the expert opinion is not them acting as a publisher. And this is a completely dishonest argument. And you know what? Ted Cruz has been the head of these stupid campaigns against social media companies censoring conservatives because you know what? He talks well, and he is a stupid man's smart person, and he's like a mini Trump, and he's really become that, and he's really embracing that, I think, and it's really sad. He's done several of these with Jack Dorsey and other social media people like over the past few weeks. None of them have been anything to report on because nothing comes out of them, and it's just stupid complaining, snowflake dribbling by Republicans against these. Oh, why are you censoring us? Why can't I say racist, stupid, fucking lies on your social media platform? Okay, sorry. This story just really heated me up today, but thank you for watching today's show. Okay, I hope you enjoyed it. Joe Biden is going to be our next president. That's really exciting. He still lost the state of Texas, so my vote was essentially useless, but it's okay because that might go away in the future if we get rid of electoral college. Oh, I wanted to talk about today actually. Oh, wow, I skipped over that. I was going to talk about the Senate and the Electoral College in my second segment today about how the Republican Party is transactional, but it's okay. Look, I think you get the gist. I think you understand. You want to know more? DM me. Okay. Have a great day, everybody. I'll see you next time.